Hello everyone. Recently I made a video about Lola Bunny where I talked about her redesign. I centered the video entirely around, well, the female upper chest region, and did about as much with that as YouTube would allow me. But this time I would like to focus on the first full look at the upcoming movie, Space Jam: A New Legacy. And oh boy, do I feel some things. A lot of contradictory things. Hopefully this video isn't going to be too long because I want to keep things low maintenance as I work on other projects, but I'll go over my main thoughts. First of all, there's the fact that this is a sequel to a movie based on an advertising campaign for, shoes. So my expectations are quite low. This will most likely not be one of the greatest movies of all time or anything. So I'm basically just hoping for a good time. If anything cringe happens, like if one of the plot points involves Bugs Bunny making a TikTok account, I'll try my best to laugh at it and pretend that my soul didn't just wither away and fall off into the pits of the underground, which, according to the Jamverse, is where the Toons live. That's going to give the Wascoey Wabbit something to go all bug-eyed about. By the way, this movie reminds me of the new Tom and Jerry movie in a lot of ways. A new theatrical installment for a group of classic cartoon characters, soundtracked with hip-hop, and featuring some unholy combination of both 2D and 3D animation in the same movie at the same time. Updated for a new generation, and it most likely has a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes. But who knows, maybe Space Jam will get a 60% or something. That's how you know it's spicy and different, or just incredibly boring. I mean, the thing I want the least out of this movie is for it to be boring. Second on that list is probably if this movie filled me with unbridled rage or something. I don't really want to feel that, but it's better than boring. Also, I should definitely mention that I've been following this movie way more than I usually do for movies that haven't released yet. I think the Sonic movie comes in pretty close to this, but that's only because news about the ungodly Sonic design was fucking everywhere in May of 2019, and even a little before that. But I first heard about this movie when a teaser image was released in September of 2018. This was around the time I started drawing and animating in 2D. I was a big fan of traditional animation. I was practically paralyzed with anticipation over what stylistic direction this movie would go in. But here's the thing, if you want a good old-fashioned traditionally animated movie, Klaus already exists. And like I said earlier, the Tom and Jerry movie comes just close enough to recapturing that classic cartoon aesthetic that it makes you realize that even if every frame were hand-painted by Richard Williams himself, it wouldn't take away from the fact that most of the story, and consequently the runtime, is taken up by boring live-action actors with their boring, by-the-book story. Though as far as raw animation style is concerned, Tom and Jerry and A New Legacy both have this thing where they reconcile the need to stay true to the original material and the need to animate in a way that's cost-effective and fits in with what is financially feasible and accessible to modern audiences by animating in both 2D and 3D at the same time. Tom and Jerry does this by modeling the characters in 3D and applying 2D effects to them. If you look at a still frame from the movie, it looks like a drawing. If you play it back, however, the character's motion is very smooth. Too smooth for it to be strictly frame by frame, to be sure. The new Space Jam does this, however, by just having the characters be animated in 2D in the Toon world, and fully CGI when they're in the real world, though I don't know what constitutes the real world in this batshit universe. And of course, Bugs says his classic line.
What's up, Doc?
Oh my god, he said it. He said the line. I'm literally shaking right now. I'm going to call up my past self and tell him not to worry, because Bugs Bunny said the fucking line.
Classic.
All jokes aside, seeing Bugs in 2D is not really exciting. It's not breaking new ground. Even seeing him in 3D has been done before, I think. Maybe. At least the Looney Tunes have been 3D before. But it is cool to see a stylized depiction of LeBron James in 2D. That's almost kind of different in terms of theatrical animated output nowadays. But here's the thing about 2D animation, and this is coming from someone who's tried 2D animation multiple times. So listen up, you jamsters, you slammin' jammin' hamsters. 2D animation is fucking hard, and I understand why Disney wanted nothing to do with it in the 2010s. CGI allows for much more detailed animation, as well as the whole perspective thing that reality seems to be all about. Have you looked outside? Objects love decreasing in size with distance and moving at different speeds relative to said distance. And computers allow you to do that automatically. But 2D animation is much more direct and honest. What you see is exactly what was drawn, with maybe a few effects laid on top. Plus, it's very expressive and simple, but can also be very beautiful and complex. Unfortunately, if you want some assistance while animating, you'll find that the computers cannot help you. Also, the final result often looks kind of flat, since there's only so much you can do without murdering your wrist and spending 30 years on a movie that never actually came out. But the thing is, when I see what Warner Brothers did with their 2D animation in A New Legacy, it looks almost too simple. I'm not quite used to seeing this sort of aesthetic in a modern animated movie. I've become acclimated to the other part of the trailer where the characters have lighting, and you can see every particle of fur on Bugs' arm, and there's actual cinematic detail. One thing that's different in this version, as compared to the original, is that the characters fully fit in with the live-action environments. Or rather, the CGI environments. Actually, it's most likely CG all the way down, let's be real. Whereas in the original, the characters could only really be 2D no matter the situation, because CGI in the mid-90s was kind of uncanny. Imagine if everything looked like Wayne Knight being inflated in this scene. The movie would have been different, and worse. But CGI has obviously matured since then, and it doesn't really look ugly anymore. And when it does, it's a lot more subtle, almost subjective. Nowadays, when CGI looks ugly, like really ugly, it's not because the technology isn't there, it's because the technology was poorly utilized, or the idea itself was an affront to all that is good and pure about the world. Nowadays, the vast majority of CG animation is just there. It's passable. It's stimulated the economy somewhat. We don't even notice it anymore. I mean, 2D animation as well. It's all over TV shows, and it can be just as passable and boring as any other animation medium. That's the thing at the end of the day, and I've realized a lot since watching this trailer. Even as a die-hard traditionally animated purist who wants the medium to make a return as much as anyone else in the YouTube comment section under those Moana pencil tests or what have you, even as someone who loves this medium and wants it to return, first of all, it already has. Second of all, the best 2D animation cannot save a movie from being forgettable or downright awful. Third of all, even if this movie had the best animation ever, and even the best story ever, and it was 100% faithful to the original, there's one thing that a new legacy will not and never will have going for it. It will not be a 90s time capsule. This movie will have come out in 2021, and maybe decades from now it will remind people of what the 20s were like. But when all is said and done, it's a goddamn sequel to a movie that already exists. I don't think a movie has ever been good purely because it references something else that's good. It was because it had something unique to offer that can stand the test of time. Maybe you and I will watch this movie and we'll all get that dopamine rush from seeing a new Space Jam movie and seeing Lola Bunny in 4K or whatever.
Whoa, nice graphic!
But for me personally, it will be impossible to recreate the sheer sensory overload from watching Space Jam in the school auditorium when I was 8. And rewatching the movie when I was older was a fun experience because it gave me an authentic look into what late 20th century pop culture was like. Space Jam: A New Legacy could be the greatest movie ever, but it can't retroactively come out in the 90s. It can't erase the original. Even if it's better than the original, you can't be a child again. So I suppose the moral of the story is, just watch this movie, appreciate what you can, but don't be surprised if you're still the same person with the same problems by the end of it. And also don't be surprised if it sucks, because technically speaking, the original sucks too, at least according to critics. Fingers crossed that Space Jam: A New Legacy will suck in all the right ways. But I'm going to remain somewhat skeptical. Thank you for watching this video, and remember to always eat your fruits. And also stay cute.